Hey, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a concept that's surprisingly slippery, integrity. It's one of those words everyone throws around, but when you try to pin it down, it gets kind of fuzzy. And since you're a philosopher, we're going to take a deep dive into integrity through a philosophical
That's
lens.
right. No surface level stuff here. We're going beyond the everyday use of the word. We're going to wrestle with those deeper questions philosophers have been grappling with for centuries, really.
Yeah. Our guidebook for this journey, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on, you guessed it, integrity.
Exactly. Ready for some serious mind bending.
I think so.
Aye.
I'm ready. Let's bend our minds.
All right. But before we dive into all the different philosophical theories,
Mm.
why don't we start with why integrity is such a puzzle in the first place?
Yeah, it seems like it should be simple, right? Be a good person, do the right thing, easy peasy.
You would think so,
Yeah,
but clearly it's more complicated than that.
clearly.
And that's because integrity can be both a moral and a personal concept. On the one hand, we associate it with moral uprightness, being a good person. But on the other hand, someone can have integrity even if they hold views that we consider flawed, or even downright wrong.
Wait, so you're saying someone could be dedicated to, let's say, a harmful ideology and still be considered a person of integrity?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
How does that even work?
That's where the personal aspect comes in. Think of it this way. Integrity can be about consistency with one's own values and commitments, even if those values themselves are questionable from a moral standpoint.
So it's less about being objectively good and more about an internal consistency,
Exact.
even if it leads to actions we might disagree with.
Precisely. The Stanford Encyclopedia highlights this tension beautifully. It's about wholeness, but not necessarily moral purity.
Wholeness, okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Think about the integrity of an object, like a pristine wilderness
Yeah.
or a perfectly functioning machine.
Right, like a flawless diamond or something. Its value comes from its perfect structure.
Exactly. Now, we're not saying people with integrity are like flawless diamonds, completely untouched by the world.
Well, that would make for some pretty boring dinner parties, I think.
True.
All right.
But the point is that a person with integrity has a certain wholeness to their character, a consistency between their actions and their beliefs.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm starting to see the contours of this puzzle.
Yeah.
But how do we go deeper? How do we actually figure out what this wholeness looks like in practice? That's where these philosophical theories come in, right?
Precisely. The Stanford Encyclopedia outlines 5 major philosophical accounts of integrity. Each offers a unique perspective on what makes a life lived with integrity. Think of them as different lenses through which to examine this complex concept.
Five different perspectives. All right. Well, this is where things get really interesting. I'm ready. Lay the first theory on me.
All right, the first one is integrity as self-integration, an idea championed by the philosopher Harry Frankfurt.
Self-integration. It sounds like getting your act together, making sure your inner world isn't a complete mess. Am I on the right track?
You're getting there. Frankfurt argues that we have desires on different levels. Let's say you have a strong desire for another cup of coffee. That's a first-order desire.
Oh, believe me, I know that desire well, especially this early in the morning.
But you might also have a second-order desire, a desire about your desire. For example, you might want to cut back on caffeine because you value your sleep more. That's a second-order desire.
Ah, the classic battle between, what we want in the moment and what we know is good for us. So how does this relate to integrity?
Well, according to Frankfurt, a person with integrity brings these different levels of desire into harmony. They identify with their higher-order desires and act accordingly. They're not just driven by fleeting whims. They're guided by their considered values.
So in the coffee example, the person with integrity would acknowledge their craving, but choose to prioritize their sleep, because that's what their wholehearted self truly values.
You got it. They've reflected on their desires and made a conscious decision about which ones align with their deeper sense of self.
This makes sense, but I can see a potential snag. Couldn't someone be wholeheartedly dedicated to something that isn't necessarily good? What if someone is deeply committed to, let's say, spreading misinformation, or even causing harm? Would we still consider them a person of integrity?
You've hit on a key critique of this view. It seems to only focus on internal consistency without considering the content of those desires. In other words, it's possible to be wholehearted in your dedication to something harmful.
So could someone be a model of self-integration and still be, well, a bad person.
That's the troubling implication. And that brings us to the second view of integrity, integrity as identity, which tackles this issue head on. It shifts the focus from fleeting desires to something more enduring, our commitments.
Commitments. So we're talking about things that are bigger than just wanting that extra cup of coffee.
Exactly. Think about those commitments that are truly central to who you are, those things that give your life meaning and purpose.
Okay, so our commitments to our philosophical work, our relationships, maybe even our personal pursuit of knowledge and truth,
Yeah,
right? These are the things that make you, you.
precisely. And according to this view, championed by philosophers like Bernard Williams, integrity means staying true to those identity-defining commitments.
Okay, so it's about loyalty to what matters most to you, even when things get tough. I can see the appeal of that. But but isn't there a danger here? What if someone's core commitments are based on like false information or blind faith? Would we still call that integrity?
That's a great question, and it highlights a major challenge for this view of integrity. Sticking to your guns is only admirable if you're aiming in the right direction, right?
Right. So while this idea of integrity as rooted in our deepest commitments is compelling, it seems like we need a way to distinguish between blind loyalty and integrity that's grounded in something more substantial.
Absolutely.
What's next on our philosophical tour?
Well, let's shift gears to a perspective that brings in the heavy hitter of ethics, Immanuel Kant. This third view is called the self-constitution view of integrity.
Ooh, Kant. Knew we couldn't have a philosophical deep dive without him making an appearance. How does his framework apply here?
Well, it's fascinating how Kant's ideas about autonomy and reason connect to integrity. Christine Korsgaard, a modern Kantian philosopher, argues that integrity isn't just something we strive for. It's actually a precondition for being a moral agent at all.
Hold on, a precondition? That's a bold statement.
Right.
As a philosopher yourself, I bet this resonates with you, right?
Yeah.
It's like saying you can't philosophize meaningfully without integrity. Tell me more.
Exactly. Korsgaard argues that we constitute ourselves as moral beings through our choices and actions. And to act with integrity means acting on principles that your future self could rationally endorse. It's about creating a unified self over time,
Right.
not just flitting from one decision to the next without a coherent framework.
I'm starting to see how this connects to Kant's emphasis on reason and and universalizability, right? It's not enough to just act on a whim. You have to think, would I still stand by this decision later on as a different version of myself? It's like holding yourself accountable to your own principles, even as you grow and change.
You've got it. Korsgaard uses a thought-provoking example to illustrate this idea. Imagine a Russian nobleman who wants to give away his fortune to help the less fortunate when he's older, but worries he'll become less altruistic as he ages. So how can he ensure that he'll follow through on this commitment, even if his inclinations change?
Wow, that's a real dilemma. I can see how this gets to the heart of self-constitution. Does he just have to hope for the best, or is there a way to bind his future self to his current ideals?
That's where the power of principle comes in. Korsgaard argues that the solution is to act on principles that are so strong, so deeply rooted in reason, that they'll hold true no matter how your circumstances or desires change.
So it's about creating a sense of self that transcends those fleeting emotions or self-interested impulses. It's about grounding your identity in principles that can withstand the test of time.
Exactly. It's a demanding view, but it offers a powerful framework for understanding integrity as something more than just consistency. It's about building a self that's anchored in reason and moral principles.
Yeah, I'm really starting to see the richness of this concept. We've gone from internal harmony to identity defining commitments, and now this idea of self-constitution through principled action. Each view adds another layer to the puzzle.
Absolutely. And as we explore the remaining two views, you'll see how this intricate tapestry of ideas continues to weave together. Shall we move on to the fourth perspective?
You bet. What's next on our philosophical journey into integrity?
All right, the fourth view takes a slightly different approach. It emphasizes the social dimension of integrity. It's called integrity as standing for something.
Okay, so this sounds a bit more action-oriented. Less internal reflection, more taking a stand in the world.
Precisely. This view, championed by Cheshire Calhoun, argues that integrity is not just a private matter. It plays out in our interactions with others, in how we navigate the complexities of social life.
This is intriguing. So integrity isn't just about being true to yourself. It's also about how you engage with your community and stand up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult.
Exactly. Calhoun argues that integrity involves having the courage of your convictions, being willing to voice your dissent, even when others disagree. It's about taking a stand for what your best judgment tells you is right, even when it's unpopular.
Hmm. I can see how this connects to the idea of integrity as being whole. It's about integrating your personal values with your actions in the social sphere. But doesn't this raise a tricky question? How do we distinguish between standing up for our beliefs and just being stubborn or dogmatic? Isn't there a danger of confusing integrity with inflexibility?
That's a critical point, and Calhoun addresses it directly. She emphasizes that integrity involves more than just blindly clinging to your beliefs. It also requires respect for the judgments of others and a willingness to engage in open and honest dialogue. It's not about being a lone wolf. It's about participating in a community of moral discourse.
So integrity involves a delicate balance. You need
Okay.
to have strong convictions, but also be open to considering other perspectives. It's about standing your ground while also remaining open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
You've captured it perfectly. It's this dynamic tension between conviction and openness that makes integrity such a challenging and rewarding ideal.
This view really adds another layer to our understanding of integrity. It's not just about personal wholeness. It's about how that wholeness manifests in our interactions with others, how we navigate the complexities of social life while staying true to our values.
Exactly. And that leads us to the final view, which brings moral considerations to the forefront. Integrity as moral purpose.
Okay, so this is where we explicitly link integrity to ethics. It's not just about being consistent or standing up for what you believe in. It's about those beliefs aligning with some notion of moral goodness.
You got it. This view emphasizes the importance of moral considerations in defining integrity. It
Yeah.
asks, can you truly be a person of integrity if your actions, however consistent, ultimately lead to harmful outcomes?
That's a tough question. It seems like there's a lot of room for debate here. Some might say that you can't have integrity without being a morally good person,
Hmm.
while others might argue that integrity is more about the effort and intention behind your actions, even if you don't always get it right.
You've hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of disagreement among philosophers about how tightly we should tie integrity to morality. Some, like Mark Halfon, argue that integrity is about striving to live a moral life, even if we fall short sometimes. It's about the commitment to moral purpose, the intellectual honesty, and examining your own actions and
So
motivations.
so it's more about the journey than the
Mm.
destination, the continuous effort to align your actions with your moral compass, even though you might make mistakes along the way.
Exactly. But even Halfon acknowledges the potential for conflict here. He admits that in theory, even someone committed to a horrific ideology could have integrity if they were truly dedicated to their twisted principles.
Whoa, that's a really challenging thought. So according to this view, a person could be a model of consistency and commitment, but still be doing terrible things in the world.
That's the unsettling implication, and it raises a fundamental question. Are there limits to how far we can stretch the concept of integrity? Are there certain lines you just can't cross, certain values you can't violate, and still be considered a person of integrity?
That's a profound question, and it leads us to another crucial debate: is is integrity actually a virtue in the traditional sense? We've been talking about it as if it is, but is there more to the story?
That's right. It's not as straightforward as it might seem, and that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
So we've explored these five different philosophical accounts of integrity: self-integration, identity, self-constitution, standing for something, and moral purpose.
Right.
And each one has really shed light on a different facet of this complex concept. But now you're saying there's a debate about whether integrity is even virtue at all.
Well, yeah, the traditional understanding of a virtue is that it's a character trait that motivates us to act in certain ways. Think of courage, for example.
Hmm.
It motivates us to face danger, even when we're afraid. And there's a characteristic way of thinking associated with courage. You assess the risks, you weigh the potential consequences, and you make a choice based on your understanding of what's at stake.
Okay, so a virtue has both a motivational and a cognitive component, It shapes how we feel and how we think. But you're saying integrity doesn't fit this mold.
That's the argument put forth by some philosophers, including Bernard Williams, who we've encountered before. He argues that integrity, at least in the sense of staying true to your identity-defining commitments, doesn't have these specific motivations or thought patterns.
Okay, so it's not about having a particular feeling or thought process, right?
Wrong.
It's more about a way of being in the world, a
Yeah.
commitment to living in accordance with your deepest values, whatever
Yeah.
those might be.
Exactly. And because of this lack of specific motivations or thoughts, Williams questions whether integrity truly qualifies as a virtue in the traditional sense.
That's a fascinating challenge.
Yeah.
But if integrity isn't a virtue in the classic sense, how do we make sense of its importance? I mean, we clearly value it. We admire people who demonstrate integrity, and we see its absence as a serious character flaw.
You're right. There's definitely something valuable about integrity, and other philosophers have risen to its defense, offering alternative ways to understand its place within the realm of virtues. One compelling idea is that integrity is a cluster concept.
A cluster concept.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. What does that mean?
Well, it means that instead of being a single well-defined trait, integrity is actually a collection of different character traits that work together to create a sense of wholeness and coherence in a person.
So it's like a mosaic, right? Made up of many different pieces that when combined, create a larger and more meaningful picture. What kind of traits might be included in this integrity cluster?
Well, Stanford Encyclopedia points to several possibilities: honesty, self-awareness, courage, the ability to resist temptation, the willingness to stand up for what you believe in, and a commitment to rational reflection.
It's starting to make sense. Maybe the unifying thread is that a person with integrity takes their life seriously. They're not just drifting along, reacting to whatever comes their way. They're actively engaged with their values, striving to live in a way that reflects their deepest convictions.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And this idea of taking one's life seriously can help us understand the different types of integrity we often talk about.
Different types of integrity. I thought it was like a singular concept.
Well, we often use the term integrity in specific contexts. We talk about intellectual integrity, artistic integrity, professional integrity, and so on.
Right, like a scientist who's committed to pursuing truth no matter where it leads,
Mm.
or an artist who stays true to their creative vision even when it's unpopular.
Exactly. And the question is, are these different types of integrity separate from each other? Or do they all contribute to a person's overall integrity? Can you be, say, a brilliant scientist with impeccable intellectual integrity, but a terrible friend or partner in your personal life?
That's a great question. It seems like these different forms of integrity could exist somewhat independently, but
Yeah.
they could also influence each other. If you practice intellectual honesty in your work, wouldn't that make you more likely to be honest in your personal relationships as well?
That's a very plausible connection. And the Stanford Encyclopedia highlights this interplay between different types of integrity. It suggests that while there can be some degree of separation, these different facets of integrity can also reinforce and strengthen each other, contributing to a more robust and well-rounded sense of self.
This whole discussion has really broadened my understanding of integrity. It's not just about moral purity or rigid adherence to rules. It's about a commitment to wholeness, a willingness to grapple with difficult questions, and a dedication to living in accordance with your values, even when it's hard.
Yeah, that's a beautiful summation, and it leads to a final thought-provoking question. Given the complexities of modern life with all its pressures and competing demands, is it even possible to live a life of complete integrity? Or is integrity always going to be something we strive for, something we constantly work towards but never fully achieve?
That's a question worthy of a lifetime of philosophical inquiry, and as a philosopher, you're well equipped to continue this exploration.
Indeed. I encourage you to delve deeper into the Stanford Encyclopedia, explore these different perspectives on integrity, and see where your own philosophical journey takes you.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the basic definition of integrity to its complex relationship with morality and its potential limitations in the face of modern challenges. So to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this philosophical adventure. Until next time, keep questioning, keep reflecting, and keep striving for a life lived with integrity.